All right, so we're going to be talking about the bubble CPAP setup. So I'm going to split it up into talking about the pulse setup first, and then we'll look at the interface, okay? So your circuit kit, this is your, I'll use your pulse. Your circuit kit, when you take it out of the packaging, comes with an inspiratory and expiratory limb, your MR290 water chamber, that's the same water chamber with every F&P system, a pressure pop-off manifold. This has a white cap and it says B CPAP on the front. This pops off at 17 centimeters of water pressure. All right, and the last thing in that little kit is the bubbler. So this is the bubbler that's actually going to be driving your CPAP. So here's a better look at that bubbler. So on the top here, we have a funnel. So that funnel is just used for to help pouring in the sterile water. If you lose it, it's not a big deal. You don't have to have this. You can just pour right in there. And I just say that because this gets lost in the bag all the time. So don't worry if you can't find that. The other portion we have here on the top is the straw. So this is actually going to be where you're setting the CPAP. So when somebody is prescribing a CPAP of 6, you are going to set your straw right at the 6. So the number that you see right before it goes into the bubbler is what the CPAP is set at. So you can see the 6 there. If it needs to go down to 7, it's got little notches that you just drop down and you pull up and out. So there's 5. So again, that number right before it goes into the bubbler is what the CPAP is set at. Okay. The bubbler itself has a fill. This is like the fill chamber, and this is the overfill chamber. So for the fill chamber, you want to fill this with water to the fill line right here and over. So you have some water starting out in the overflow chamber. That ensures that you have enough water starting out. You don't want to have too little water and then, your CPAP is going to be off there. The overflow chamber is important as well. If condensation is draining back into the bubbler, it never gets too high. It always is just going to go over into that overflow chamber. So we're constantly maintaining the appropriate level of water in the system. All right, and you guys have yours on your pull here. Perfect. So we have water to the fill line there, and then you can see that there is some water in that overflow chamber. If you ever want to take that overflow chamber out, the little trick to it is kind of push it up and slide out. So it won't slide out directly if you're just pulling. You kind of got to give it a push up and then out. All right, so your inspiratory limb is heated. So you do have your heater wire adapters and temp probes. All right, so we got our little temp probes here, heater wire adapters, just again, and like any other F&P system. Your expiratory limb is unheated. So you see it's just a clear tube that is going down to your bubbler. So that plugs in at the top of the straw of the bubbler. This is unheated, so naturally that heated and humidified gas as it's going through this tubing is going to, create some condensation and rain out. So we want to just help gravity move that down into the bubbler and away from the baby. So that's why we have the bubbler a little bit lower than the heater. And then, we just want to take out kind of, any bend in the tubing. So we want to help, kind of keep this straight. And as you're going around and checking and doing checks with the baby, you just want to go ahead and drain this back into the bubbler. So we want to just kind of make sure that this is staying as clear as possible. When there is a ton of rain out in this tubing, it will create an occlusion or, kind of start to occlude and can increase the CPAP that you're delivering. So we want to, make sure that that is staying as clear as possible. All right, also on your chamber, I mentioned that pop-off manifold. So that's just going to sit right here, and then you'll just put oxygen tubing to the top of the pressure manifold to your flow meter. And your starting flow rate for the bubbler is 8 liters a minute of flow. All right, so just turn that to 8, and then you will set your CPAP by the straw. Any questions on the pulse setup?
Then you don't touch the flow meter ever again.
Yes.
You or the nurses.
Yeah, just stays at 8. All right, let's talk about the interface. Okay, so the first thing we need to find out is the circumference of the baby's head. And that's going to help us determine what size bonnet we need to get for the baby. So the bonnet is going to be the anchor for the whole respiratory system. So we want to make sure that it's appropriately fitting. It's not too loose. If the bonnet is too loose, things start to slide and you can, cause little pressures and stuff on their face. So we need the circumference of the head. You'll grab the corresponding size bonnet. If you have a baby on an overlapping size, like 29 is an overlap, the next size down is a 29 to 25, go with the smaller size. It's a lot easier to get the bigger size, but they stretch out. So they get kind of this old sock effect and they start kind of sliding around and stuff. So you want to get the right, the right size. Just put your hands in between the bonnet and give a nice little pull and to kind of stretch it out that first time. We're going to put it on with the numbers on the forehead here. On the back of the bonnet, there are two little Velcro pieces. Just a tip is to open these Velcro pieces up. It just sometimes is difficult once this is on and those Velcro right in the back of baby's head to kind of fiddle with that. So just open it up and help yourself out there. So we'll put this on and slide that down. So we have the ears covered. We want to start the bonnet in a nice low position, ears covered, and bonnet down to the eyebrows. Okay, so sometimes you'll see bonnets where they're up a little high, where it's sitting just like a hat, and those will just slide off too quickly. So we want to start nice and low with the bonnet. All right. Next thing is you will grab your flexi trunk tubing. So you guys have the 70 millimeter. And when we talk about size of the tubing, that is actually the length of this piece right here. And I think you guys said you were going to get the 50s.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a smaller size, the 50, and that's going to be for more your micro preemies. So 70 is going to be probably the size that you use the majority of the time. But occasionally if you get those little ones, you'll grab the 50. So the packaging looks just like this. When we go and open the packaging up, the first thing you want to grab is your ruler or sizing guide. So on this ruler, there are 11 pairs of dots. Those are the prong sizes, and 4 masks. So we're going to use this and look over baby here to gauge what size prongs and mask we want to use. Now for prongs, we need a 100% occlusion in the nares. So we want to make sure we're fully occluding the nares. If those are challenging to get in the nares the first time, you can put a little bit of saline on the end to help lubricate the prongs. If you see skin blanching, that is fine as long as it reaches normal or returns to normal skin color after about 10 to 15 seconds. And then last but not least, these prongs are very long. So a lot of times people look at them and they're like, we need to cut those or something. They're designed not to go into the nares all the way, all right? So they should stick out about 2 millimeters. You don't have to measure that or anything, but they should not be bumping up against the septum. If they're bumping up against the septum, they're too small and they're sliding in too far. So get a bigger size. The nares sometimes will dilate after a day or so. So if you notice that your once good fitting prongs are now slipping into the nares all the way, grow the prongs, get the next size up. They bump up by 5 millimeters in size, each size you go up. So it's not a huge jump. So, go ahead and then bump up the size there. All right, that's prongs. Masks are pretty easy. Little triangles here on the front of the ruler. You're just gonna look at that over baby's nose and gauge what size is going to go all the way around the nose without any touching kind of the internal pieces of this triangle on the nose here. So we want to make sure that there's plenty of room there. We don't want the mask kind of popping up on the side and causing any leak there. All right, so you'll grab your corresponding prongs and mask that we found, and we have our flexi trunk tubing. All right, so let's go ahead and start putting this on. So one thing I forgot to mention on your bonnet, it is open on the top if you need to run a scalp IV or ultrasound. If you're not, you can just take these little strings and tie that off. When you take the flexi trunk out of the packaging the very first time, let's have it all fresh and new here. There is this gray foam block that allows you to secure this to the bonnet. it has these two little foam wedges. So think of kind of like a shim where it's going to help make sure that this is level to the bed. So these are designed to make sure that this piece is level to the bed. So the general rule of thumb with that is the first foam piece is used if the baby has a coned head. So if the baby's got a coned head, they always have a foam piece in. If the baby is using the mask, they always have a foam piece in, okay? So there's a height difference between the masks and the prongs. So we need to make up that height difference when the baby's on the mask with this foam piece, okay? So if the baby has a coned head and they're using a mask, we're gonna use two foam pieces, okay? We're gonna put those in line. So when you take it out of the packaging, they are connected on that gray foam block. So the first time you're gonna remove a piece, you have to tear it. And then once you go to put it back in line, there's not a way to like reconnect it or anything. You just set it in line. All right. Okay, so I'm going with my mask first. So I have one foam block in there. So I'm going to take my mask, and my little tip is hold it with the tubing facing down and the point of the mask facing down. And then this will just slide in the end of the flexi trunk. The mask is really easy. It's like a soft little silicone. It'll just go in nice and easy there. All right, so when we go to put this on baby, typically you'll have someone there with you. If it's a nurse or another RT, you're gonna give them a job. You're gonna say, okay, I need you to stabilize the baby and hold the interface off, okay? So there and there. All right, so that is going to allow you to make the sizing adjustments you need to do without having kind of a tug of war, one person adjusting here, one person adjusting here. So we wanna make sure everything's nice and even on both sides. So when the interface is on, we have this little blue foam piece on the top with Velcro that will secure the top of the flexi trunk to the top of the bonnet. Then we have our side straps. On these side straps here, there is this little back-to-back D-ring. So that slides around and twists all the way around when you take it out of the packaging and stuff. It's loose. So my trick is make sure that the open side of that little back-to-back D-ring there is facing up. We're gonna take that and then attach that to the blue glide bar. You can do the same thing over here. And then you will tighten kind of evenly at the same time and push those blue foam strips down below the jaw. Now, that little trick of, making sure that open side is facing up will help make sure that these straps are flat. There's no twist in them. If there's a twist in them, it's not a big deal. I just know people, don't like to see that aesthetically. So they like to make sure they get it nice and flat. All right, and then we want to make sure that these blue foam pieces are down below the jawline as much as possible. Just think of this kind of like a football helmet. So it's going to secure everything down, keep it from sliding up on the head. The more it slides, the more pressure, that's ultimately going to create on the baby's face. All right, and then put it in here. So we'll put the inspiratory limb on top. Think blue like the sky, so that's on top, and expiratory limb on the bottom. That's just a little tip to help with rain out. If you forget and you put expiratory limb on the top, it's not a big deal. No harm there. So just a little tip to help with the rain out. We want to make sure that the tubing is going out the side corner pocket, never out the top or middle slot there. This will tend to kind of back up and then direct rain out back down towards the baby. So we want to go at the side corner pocket here with the tubing. This temp probe is right here at the end of the circuit. So this makes this piece of the full system very heavy and can pull on the interface. So we want to make sure that we're supporting that very well and that's not causing any undue pressure on the baby's face. Okay. All right, let's talk about prongs. Put our prongs on. So you guys are going to switch between mask and prongs every 4 hours. to give the skin a rest. So because my baby has a nice round head and they're going to prongs, I'm going to take out my one foam strip. Please keep that foam strip and your mask put it in a little specimen jar so this doesn't get thrown away. Keep that. All right, for your prongs. My little trick here is put the prongs in between your index finger and thumb. There is like this little Tupperware lid that goes around on the prongs, and that's going to wrap around the outside of the flexi trunk here. So you want to kind of open that up, wedge in that index finger side on first. So now it's already, you know, halfway on. And then all you have to do is kind of pinch with your thumb and it will roll down onto the rest of the flexi trunk there, okay? So that'll take just a little bit of practice, and I have a couple extras up here if you guys want to practice after this. So pinch and roll, and then we'll just put that into the nares, and then of course the same process. Please be sure, just get in the habit of undoing the Velcro on these side straps when you're going between mask and prongs, because it won't necessarily be in the same exact place. All right, so if you have a red triangle around the nose, the mask is too tight. If you have redness on the forehead, that could be caused from pulling here at the interface and it's pushing down on the forehead. Redness on the septum, prongs are too small, they're slipping in and bumping up against the septum too much, or you're pushing them too far into the nails. All right, let's turn this on, and here's some bubbles. I'm gonna put my mask back on so I can get a little seal here.
When should we be checking the forehead to see if it's too tight? Any redness or anything?
Just during like your normal checks. What do you guys?
Like when you change the mask with prongs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you guys don't have to use the bonnet. These little things are.
Oh, okay.
The nurses are comfortable with the mask.
Thank you. All right, so starting flow on your flow meter is going to be at 8. We have our CPAP set at 5, according to the straw here. If there's no leak in the line, then you will have bubbles. So when you start to have a leak somewhere, your bubbles will go away. So we want to make sure that we're listening for the bubbles, because there is no alarm, you know, if there is a leak somewhere in the system. So the bubbles or lack of bubbles are going to be your indicator that there's a leak somewhere. All right. So first thing, check the interface and then kind of work your way back on the system. So look at the interface and then, you know, kind of go back and see if there's something going on.
Can we do the leak test then?
Yes, so let's do that. Okay, so for the leak test, you want to turn your flow down to 1 liter of flow. I don't know if it's going to do it with our...
We'll try 0.5. Oh, there's 1.
There's 1, okay. And then you have to put the straw in all the way. It might not work just with the tank, though. Let's make it to...
Oh, 1.5. Yeah.
And sometimes when you do that leak test, you want to do the leak test before you put your temp codes and everything in line. Sometimes that can cause I don't have my little elbow piece. I don't have my elbow piece. So you'll have a little elbow piece that's going to seal the end of both tubing. But you would turn your flow to 1 and then put your straw in all the way to 10, and the goal is you want to see bubbles. So if you don't see bubbles, then there's a leak somewhere in the system.
How much bubbles?
Just it'll be like a really small amount. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So no bubble is there's a leak.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
Anything else that I missed?
The changing the BiPAP to the OptiFlow.
Good, thank you. Yes, okay. All right, so there is a transition kit. So it is the OptiFlow Junior transition kit that allows you to move your system from a bubble CPAP system to a high flow. So the case here. So it looks like this. It'll just say blender transition kit. Inside the kit, you get a new pop-off manifold. So this pop-off is set to pop off at 40 centimeters of water pressure. It says OptiFlow on the front and the cap is blue. All right, so very important. We're changing the pop-off because the cannulas will create a large amount of resistance, the high flow cannulas. So we want to make sure we have that higher pop-off. It will come with a OptiFlow Junior nasal cannula. You guys are familiar with these. So this is my red cannula here. And then a transition piece. So I'll show you how this works. So we have our bubble CPAP, inspiratory, expiratory limb, and our flexi trunk. So what we want to do is disconnect your inspiratory limb and go ahead and save your flexi trunk and expiratory limb. And then we're going to put the little adapter at the end of the circuit, and that is now going to allow you to connect the OptiFlow cannula, OptiFlow Junior cannula, because those cannulas have that proprietary connector on the end. So normally it wouldn't just, you know, connect with the end of the circuit. So we have to have this little adapter piece in there. And then you want to be sure to change your pressure pop-off. So we'll just come over here. That, and put your new tubing on. So now we've created a high flow system out of your bubble CPAP setup. All right, so it's nice because if you have a little one that was on bubble and they're going to be on high flow for a little while, then you can just move them right down to the high flow cannulas. If they don't do well on high flow and they need to go back to bubble CPAP, everything is right here ready to go. So you're not, you know, opening up a whole nother circuit and trying to reduce, you know, waste with that as well. Awesome.
And then that's just controlled by the flow meter?
Correct. So then, yeah, then the flow, you can make adjustments. Yeah, I'm not sure what, you know, what your protocols are for high flow, the little ones, but yeah.